Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, welcome back to the old survival world. And you know what? Lately, there's been something weighing on my mind. You know how my entire channel is basically built off me building this castle on top of this custom mountain and decorating the whole thing? Well, as some of you know, the backside is an absolute disaster. I mean, heck, am I building a mountain or a freeze frame of a pancake being flipped in the air? Well, it's supposed to be a mountain. And you know what? It's time to get serious. And whenever things get serious on this channel, it's usually in form of a time lapse, specifically the intro time lapse, where a lot of terraforming takes place. And today, I want to take a massive step towards finishing the entire backside of the mountain. And those of you who followed my channel for some time know that I'm not a huge fan of just randomly placing blocks. Whenever you start a big project like this that's going to be a massive time sink of hours and hours, you probably want to know what's going to go on top of your mountain before you start placing blocks. And as for these very steep grassy sections by the waterfalls, I'm going to mostly build forests and nature because it's way too steep to build any buildings on top of, which leaves us with this huge section over here. You might notice that I built a big flat area over by the automatic storage system that's not been updated in a long time, and the reason for that is that I want to expand the Ventia castle. You heard me right, I want all 360 degrees of this mountain to have a great view of the castle. Now, is this just me making excuses to be able to build more castles in Minecraft because it's my favorite thing to do in this game? Well, maybe a little bit, but aside from the fact that we're gonna get to build an awesome castle at the top of this hill, I did need to decide what's gonna go on the rest of the mountain, which leads me to these weird lines of dirt and stone slabs connecting all over the place, which are gonna be the future paths up the mountain. Having the paths planned out from the get-go really makes it a lot easier to envision the rest of the terrain as a whole. The large flat dirt section you saw me build right there is gonna be some prime real estate to set up some medieval housing, and right here you can see me thicken up the paths a little bit just to make it that much easier to see what exactly it is I'm doing. The paths being in place also makes it easier to space out the terrain to fit enough houses, and you can easily plan out the elevation change to fit your builds. And that is mostly what's going to be built over here. I do want to extend the town over onto this side of the mountain since there really aren't that many buildings in Ventia. Even though the kingdom is pretty big by survival Minecraft standards right at the moment, I want to make it big with capital letters. And as the camera pans over this way, you're going to see how much terrain we still have to build after we finish this side of the mountain. When it comes to planning the natural inclusions, rivers and mountains go together like mining and crafting. And I'll be honest, building with water in Minecraft isn't exactly fun. It's more of a necessary evil we have to use to achieve the results we want, which in this case is a nice winding river at the bottom of a ravine to spice up the terrain a little bit. Once that was done, all I had to do was connect the bottom of the terrain, and realistically, I still need to work a little bit on the beaches here. It's just something I wasn't ready to do at this stage of the build. But once that was in, we've made some proper progress towards finishing this mountain once and for all. You know how we just built a whole bunch of terrain? There's still this much missing. It's unbelievable, but look at all the space we have down here now. It's insane. And if you ever wondered where all my dirt's been coming from, let's just say it's not the best day for mushroom biomes. Now, what you see in front of you is, of course, what I just built, and I'm gonna share with you some of my meticulously crafted plans that I made in the very advanced program, Microsoft Paint. And I'm entirely certain that this exquisitely crafted piece of architectural art will give you an idea of what I plan to build. And the first thing we'll focus on is the gatehouse, which is right here. Now, before I can place this gatehouse, I need to build the foundation that it's gonna stand on, and it took a bit of doing to get it right, but eventually I got there. Which leads me to the gatehouse, which I'd normally show you guys in first person and go back and forth in between time-lapse and showing you guys what I'm doing. However, at the time of recording this, I was incredibly sick, so I didn't really feel like talking into the mic, but I had all day to design my castle in Minecraft, so I started building anyway. Now listen, the best way to describe how I'm gonna build this castle is probably the best way to describe anything, which is to reference the movie Shrek. Despite the fact that the main lesson I took from that movie is that it's way easier for a guy to get away with being fat than it is to be short, it does mention one very key concept: layers. And since we have lots of verticality to work with in this build, it's time to go all out ogre, or onion. I don't know, I'll show you what I mean in first person. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't just finish up the gatehouse in the time-lapse, I also made this little bit over here, which isn't particularly significant. It's just a repeating pattern, which we are going to repeat all the way around this corner. However, I figured I'd show you guys what I mean by layers exactly. Once up here, you can see the amazing view of my two epic viewing towers. And what I mean by layers is basically just building up another wall until we reach all the way up there so that it feels like the entire thing is all connected. In fact, we might even add some layers and balconies up on this rock. So before we get in the second layer, I figure it's probably best we build this first wall, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as that's done.
Ladies and gentlemen, since that last clip, it's been like a year. What happened? My life is crazy. The important thing is, I'm back, and Ventia still needs finishing. So before I show you guys what I just built in that time lapse, I did build a few more things. I just couldn't help myself now that I'm back. I built some stuff. I built a lot of stuff. The plan is, and always was, to finish this castle in this video. Now that was the initial plan, and as my plans have sort of evolved, there are a few parts of the castle that I can only build once I've built some of the surrounding features. One of the things I definitely can build and that we desperately need is the path leading up to the main gate of the castle. The trickiest part about this is mostly that I'm going off of plans that I made over a year ago, but also that the paths need to connect. Windy stairs are notoriously difficult to build in a game full of square blocks. This resulted in a staircase I was initially very unhappy with, and it was a big blow since I just got back to building. I wasn't gonna let a setback like that get in my way, however, so I started tearing the whole thing down and working from the ground up. Using the logic that it's usually easier to climb up things than down them, it kind of makes sense to start from the bottom and build our staircase up, and I ended up with something that I'm much happier with. Instead of focusing on making a cool staircase, I focused on the flow of the terrain. This resulted in a path that was much more the coiling path winding down the mountain that I was looking for. I did run into one issue that I had building the first staircase, and that was that it wasn't exactly easy to blend it into the terrain naturally, so instead I made this old wall-type structure to hold up the path, and I think it blends into the terrain perfectly and gives it a little bit more of an interesting look. I used a lot of moss and mossy cobblestone along with cobble and stone bricks to blend it all in with the terrain and make it look like it's been worn over time. Eventually, I ended up with something I was really happy with. A slope that very naturally cascades down the mountain, a super satisfying slope to look at from a distance, and it does have that windy serpentine quality that I was looking for. Anyway, now that that path is in place, let's hop back into first person to take a look at all the new features of the castle that I built in this time lapse. Back to me. I appreciate that, me. Welcome back to first person, and let's take a look at all the new features that I put into the castle. The first thing you'll notice is that I did put in the rest of the paths here just to see what they look like with the stone, and I am absolutely loving it. This side of the castle is really coming together. To think that there was basically nothing from there all the way over here, and we've ended up with all this new terrain. There's still a lot of texturing that needs to be done to these paths, and I need to build a proper bridge over here, but I'll do that once we start dotting in all the buildings and everything I want to build on this side of the mountain. For now, let's actually take a look at this castle. To be honest, it might be the best looking side of the castle. I love the red highlights here. I made sure you can't see them from the other side since we do want the classic Ventia flag, but man, do I love this layered cake type style of castle. It just gives it so much depth. Oh, perfect. It starts raining right when I'm showing you guys all this stuff. Come on. I've actually noticed it's been raining a lot more in my Minecraft world. What's that all about? Anyway, I love the classic stained glass window that we've used for the church down in the Ventia Harbor. We do have this top section over here, and if we enter the door, there is an opening leading into the mountainside here, so we could build a big interior for the castle, and as you guys know, all this stuff connects up to our inside of the castle. So eventually, we're just going to be able to go through the underground and connect all the bits and pieces of the castle. Taking a look from the lesser of my two viewing towers, we see this side of the castle, and I just wanted every single side to have a great view. And so looking at the castle from this diagonal, you can see how awesome this slope looks. I just really love how the paths are coming in, but we also get this awesome view of this part over here. Now, the one part of the castle that I'm not going to be finishing today and the one part of the terrain is right here. So it is going to look a little bit goofy that this is still just floating, but just trust me, that's going to be built in the next episode. I have some plans for the stuff that's going to be going here, and we're going to be finishing all the terrain going all the way around connecting to over here. So hopefully there shouldn't be this giant hole right here. I did make a few other tweaks over here. I changed the top of this tower. I think it looks a lot better now, and I did make a few changes to this building over here just to make it look a little bit more epic. It is the view from the throne room after all, and it should look pretty imposing. Another important feature is how we actually connect the two sides of the castle, and the only way to get to the other side is through this little path over here. It just connects to this staircase where we can go all the way up to the top tower, or we can go down into the courtyard with the tree over here. Man, it just feels good to be back. It's been so long. Man, the last world download was last episode, and we almost need one now. Anyway, the view from the castle that I like the least is from the north, right here. There's this big cliff face. Obviously, this is missing, and it still will be at the end of the video, but this side just looks like an absolute mess. Because this is my my least favorite side, I've gone into this with the mindset that I want to make it my favorite side of the castle. So with that said, let's roll that time lapse and see what I come up with. Going in, there are a lot of little details to address, and I'm not going to be able to do them all today. We've got to texture the entire mountain, basically all the terrain in Ventia, and all these paths. But I start by just laying down the simple foundation of stone to get us started. From there, we've got to finish this awkward side of the wall that not only connects at an angle, but also on a slope. Despite those challenges, it ended up being fairly easy to connect anyway, and I made the executive decision to change the stone brick stairs I used for the windows for some highlighted copper stairs instead. They make the walls look a little bit more interesting than just the bland mix of white and gray, and they also just mix well with the warped wood we use for the roofs. I then faced the challenge of tackling this huge vertical cliff face. Not only do I need to get all these layers in, but there's so much empty cliff face that just isn't very interesting to look at. It breaks up the build and creates way too much negative space for my liking, which means we just have to fill it out with more castle. And while I could just slap in more homogeneous fortress, going into this, I really wanted this side to stick out a bit more. To do that, I had to go back to the old drawing board to think up something a little bit more original. But before you get to see what I came up with, I just went around to all the stair windows I have on the lowest layer and replaced them all with cut copper. It looks a whole lot better, and it gives me a great excuse to just pan around the castle to show you guys the current progress. Starting the construction of this particular structure, it may look like we're just using the same palette of white, blue, and gray blocks. They are still the fundamental foundation of this build, so I need to keep the integrity intact. As for the first deviation, to keep things a little bit more interesting, I went for a stripped spruce wood roof. It's a color we've already used a bit, as you can see on the castle towards the right of the screen, and I think it works perfectly to highlight the blue parts of the roof to make the towers stick out. Speaking of which, I did something a little bit different for the peak of the central tower sticking out of the structure. I gradiate it from teal to orange to make sure it sticks out from the blue that's already behind it. Continuing that thought, I did post a community post where I showed you guys a gradient I was working on, and while I'm not really comfortable putting it on every single top of each tower, the original idea actually came from changing the peak of this tower since it's already against the stone background. And so to make it stick out just a little bit more, I gradiate it from the teal at the bottom all the way to an amethyst purple. Then there's one final elephant in the room to deal with: what to do with the giant stretch of negative space leading all the way up to the top tower. The answer to that question was immediately obvious to me. I needed to build something extremely tall. This way we fill up more of the space with actual castle, while simultaneously emphasizing the height of this thing. The castle is extremely tall, and we want that to come across immediately. The construction here isn't terribly original. We're just recycling other parts of the castle. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. We're basically picking and choosing some of the best features of the castle and just slapping them together. It contributes to consistency, and we already know it's gonna look good, so it's kind of a no-brainer. I got the chance to slap another tower fading into orange over here, and I will say the two of them look great together. Finally, I had to deal with a big stretch of wall where I deliberately didn't do too much designing, since we can just fill it up with the signature Ventia foliage. All right, ladies and gents, we are back, and as you can see, I did put in a few more details. I just added a bit of the jungle wood. I think it looks a lot better with some of the highlights here. The only thing I'm not quite sure about is the part that's right on the top of the castle there. It makes it look a little bit chunky from the profile, but let me know what you guys think. I actually think it looks quite good to add that bit of color. While we're over here, I might as well point out that we've changed the castle skyline a little bit. By adding this bit over here, I think it actually looks pretty good, connecting these parts a little bit better and not having so much empty space. Can I say it's my absolute favorite side of the castle? Well, it's hard to compete with that side and the side you can see from the valley, but once we've got all this stuff in, I think it's gonna look really, really good. Trust me. There are a few final touches we need to make, though. If you look up here, we don't really have any doors, and that's for a good reason. You see, we just got the 1.20 update, and while I missed the 1.19 update, I still have to go hunting some mangrove trees. But as you can see, I have a few sakura trees right here, and with Ventia already being a pastel-based kingdom, this stuff fits right in. And I was kind of thinking maybe we could use some of this stuff to spice up what we just built. So I just gotta snag some of this new wood. We then just have to craft up some of these planks to get some of the newer features. And I think it's gonna look really, really cool to just splash in a bit of color right here. Yep, that is looking awesome. Yep, I really love it. I think it looks awesome. It's a little splash of color, and it goes well with all the teal that we have here, and it's kind of an in-between color with the orange as well. And just as a final touch, I want to come in with these cherry leaves just to give a little bit more pop of pink. And let's just kind of go crazy here. Get as much pink in here as we possibly can. Something like that. Now we just have to copy it over to the other side. Yes, that is looking absolutely amazing. Exactly the effect I was going for. And I think we can make it even just a little bit better. The new cherry leaves give off this slight particle effect right here. And I think we can exacerbate that a little bit by just adding in a few of these spore blossoms. All I did was add in 3 of these spore blossoms and we've got this awesome particle effect going on around all this greenery. What do you think, guys? I think this side is looking absolutely amazing and I'm excited to finish it. But I'm also super excited to finish terraforming this entire side of the mountain. That way, once this is finished, we can start working on this side over here. Get Ventia looking a little bit more complete. I've got some huge plans for what's going to go up the mountain on both this and this side, and I think it's going to look absolutely amazing. I also want to add the big boat that I built on stream like 2 years ago somewhere in the ocean over here, and I think I'm going to do that fairly soon. So guys, let me know what you want to see get built in the world here in the comments below, what you want me to finish, what you want me to start working on. For now, I'm just happy that I'm back. But listen, unfortunately, that time has come. It's the end of the episode, and if you stayed all the way to the end, then you're the champ, and I appreciate your existence. So until we see each other next time, here's an update of what the castle currently looks like from all sides, and until then, have a good one.